all kinds of fun, crazy stuff happening in conferences elsewhere. It must be nice to be the Big Ten or the SEC and know that you're on pretty stable ground. It brings us to what the H?
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right, so get us up to date here on what's happening at Florida State, and the Pac-12 is falling apart. It feels like we say that every single day, but I want to discuss how that may affect the SEC. But right now, FSU is in upheaval. People are just trying their best to get out of the ACC. People are getting out of the Pac-12 10, 8, 4, 7, 3, 2, 1 because they're losing members left and right. But give us the backdrop, and then we'll discuss how this could affect the SEC.
Okay, so a couple of things happened. So this was breaking news yesterday. It was so breaking that nobody cared about it, and it didn't even make the front story of ESPN. But the thing that's been holding the Pac-12 back is they can't get a media rights deal. Well, they seem to finally have been offered one, and it's an Apple streaming deal. Now, for those who don't know the streaming business, it's a bad business model for sports teams and sports leagues, unless you're the NFL, which can just demand however much money. Because, Dave, nobody's going to buy Apple TV to watch Pac-12 games. That's not going to happen.
How much is Apple TV?
I don't even know. I don't have Apple TV. You think you got it?
I think I got it. I got a bunch of streaming. I ended up, we did the cable cord cutting thing, and we ended up paying more in the end. If I'm an Oregon fan, I would buy Apple TV to see Pac. Or are we saying I don't? Why wouldn't you buy that?
Streaming deal. No, Oregon fans will. The problem with streaming deals is you make your money off streaming based on the brand value of the team, not the market size, because it doesn't matter where your market is. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter if you're an Oregon fan in New Hampshire or Seattle. So the question becomes, how many people in these areas actually care about their teams that would actually pay for the streaming deal? See, when it's a cable bundle, you don't really have the option when you buy cable. If the Pac-12 is in your market, you have to pay for the Pac-12 network or whatever. But when it's streaming, you get to choose more and be more selective. Sports leagues don't realize how subsidized they were over the years. So, look, this may be the
I'll tell you one thing it does too, not to interrupt you, but when you go that route, it's going to limit your exposure. So you're not going to get bigger. Nobody's going to flip by like CBS or ESPN and see your game and say, oh, I want to watch that. If you're not subscribed, and I know a lot of people that stay up late at night, especially sports writers, you're kind of wired from writing and working that day, and they'll stay up late at night and watch Pac-12 games. Will all of those guys buy Apple TV so they can watch Pac-12 games? Probably not. John Adams probably will. Other than that, I don't know that a bunch of people are buying Apple TV. So your brand, unlike the SEC and the Big Ten, is not going to get that exposure day in and day out because they're on a very easily accessible channel.
Dave, that's a great point. Some of my favorite memories as a kid growing up watching college football was I couldn't go to sleep on a Saturday night and just staying up Saturday night and flipping through the channels, and I find some Washington State game where the score's in the 50s or 60s and it's a basketball game, and it was fun to watch. It was actually really good football.
I got another one for you, the Thursday night game. Just flipping around, I can still remember where I was when Virginia beat Florida State, and that was in the 90s.
Yes.
And had it not been on a very easily accessible channel, had it been on some streaming thing that I had to buy for the ACC, I wouldn't have ever seen that. But I was young at the time, really got to know what Bobby Bowden was all about and got interested in that and read a little bit about him. But you're not going to pick up any casual fans if you're on Apple. You're just not.
No, not at all. And pay attention to how the Pac-12 responds to this, because to be fair, the Pac-12 hasn't actually taken the offer officially yet. I think, Dave, the Pac-12 is holding out for some possibility that even if they lose Arizona, that they might combine with the ACC, the holders from the ACC, which is where you get to this Florida State Board of Regents meeting this week, which Arizona did earlier in the week about trying to get out of the ACC and that grant of rights contract. Could there be some sort of saving grace where the Pac-12 combines with the ACC and the power teams with the ACC to save the conference? Or is it over and Florida State's going to the SEC and Oregon's going to the Big Ten, and that's just how it's going to be? That becomes the question.
Why don't you just do this? And I mentioned this yesterday, and you think it's crazy. Why don't you just do this if you're the SEC? Go get Washington, Oregon, Arizona, Arizona State, and then your West would consist of those 4 schools: Texas, Texas A&M, LSU, Missouri. So I'm at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
You got Arkansas and
8.
Oklahoma 7 and 8, 9, 10.
Okay, but
Arkansas,
anyway,
Oklahoma, Missouri. Yeah.
But anyway, go ahead and get it to 18 or 20 teams. Just go ahead and do it. Be the mega conference. What's the Big Ten's going to say about that? They're going to say, man. Because then at least the thing I don't like about the Big Ten that's so stupid is you have 2 schools that are 3 time zones away. If you had a group of schools, I'm going outside the box a little bit here, Caleb, so work with me. If you had a group of schools that are on the western side of the United States, like Texas A&M, it's kind of like the NFL model. There's something to that where they could travel to one another, and they don't have to travel from Washington to Gainesville every year. I think build your own mega conference. It could be done with a couple of phone calls by the end of the business day.
Okay, but everybody's forgetting how big the states are out west. So, yes, they may be in the same time zone, but Oregon and Washington are really far away from Arizona.
Like, that's a plane ride. It's like an hour and a half plane ride.
I think it's further than that. Hour and a half plane ride is like, it's 2 hours for me to fly from DC to Memphis. And I think that's closer than Oregon and Washington to Arizona. We think remember, Western states are much bigger.
I don't need a geography lecture here. I understand, but still, even if it's a 2-hour plane ride, that's common practice, right? 2-hour plane ride's common practice.
I think if you're going to do this, you got to regionally try to get one of the California schools done. Stanford or Cal. Just put yourself in the San Francisco
No, I'm
market
cool with that. You're not. No. You're greasing the wheels for me now. Stanford, Cal, Oregon, Washington, Arizona State, Clemson.
At a Utah
Florida
school,
State.
maybe Utah. Get the Salt Lake City in there.
Somebody's going to pick up a phone call and make a mega conference.
Look, the Big Ten is targeting that more than the SEC right now, and I will agree with you that the SEC is. Look, their complacency with the ESPN deal, they let themselves fall behind. So the only thing I would say is they don't have to do that. Brand value matters more than market. And Florida, they got 2 brands in their backyard in Florida State and Clemson. They can just give them a call.
But do you see how my thought process is different than just having 2 schools on the left coast?
Right. I get what you're saying. Yes. You could actually create a full division on the left coast for just those schools out there. And I mean, I thought that from the start. My dream is that somehow all this works out with the SEC and the Big Ten gobble up all the elite teams, and then they form the conferences within the conference. You know what I mean? So like the SEC gets like 24 teams and the Big Ten gets 24 teams, and the SEC says, okay, we're going to have 3 8-team conferences. And that's your conference, and they kind of run it. And the same with the Big Ten. So you kind of go back to regional things, which is the SEC and Big Ten as the governing bodies, which the NCAA is right now, when the NCAA is a governing body with no teeth.